Well, friends, happy Sunday. It's good to have you here today. If we've not met before, my name is Matt Fulmer, and I'm one of the pastors here. And happy Father's Day to all the dads, or maybe more appropriately, happy Impactful Men's Day. So whether you have kids or not, whether you're an uncle or a grandfather or mentor or friend or dad, just happy day. Men, I hope that you feel valued and celebrated today. I know I'm grateful for all the men in my life that have helped me get here, and I hope that you have time to reflect on that too. Now, you may be wondering, as I stand up here, I don't usually wear a jacket, so let me explain my outfit today, because it feels a little bit uncomfortable, to tell you the truth. But this shirt, this t-shirt, it's become a tradition in my family that my 3-year-old and 6-year-old draw a heart, and then my wife sends it off, and she gets it embroidered on a shirt every year. And so this is the 6-year-old heart, and my 3-year-old wasn't feeling it that day, and so just drew a circle. And so I just have a t-shirt, and then I dressed it up with a jacket. So that's that. So that explains my outfit. And then it's, of course, Father's Day, so I feel like I have to start with a little bit of a dad's joke. Do you know how you make holy water? This is kind of a combination between a dad's joke and a pastor joke, but do you all know how you make holy water? Boil the hell out of it. There you go. All right, so, or did you hear the one about the kid who started a business on the playground by, tying shoelaces on the playground? Did you hear about this? It was a not-for-profit. So the boiling the hell out of it is better, that's for sure. So, all right, so as many of you know, I've been out of town for the last couple of Sundays. One of those I spent on vacation or on a trip with my family, my wife and 2 kids. There's a picture of them. And then my sister-in-law is also up there. We took a road trip down to Florida. And when you come back from vacation, the most obvious question, of course, was, hey, how was your trip? How was your vacation? And a lot of people have asked me, a lot of you have asked me, like, was it relaxing? Was it energizing now that you're away? You feel so rejuvenated. And I know what I should say. I should say yes, 100%. But I want you to think just for a moment. Have you ever been in a car with a 3-year-old that you're trying to potty train, that feels every emotion from top to bottom in every bit of her being? And then you add to that a 6-year-old with more questions and needs than there are stars in the sky. And imagine that situation and being in that car for 30 hours round trip. And when you get to your destination, we went to the beach, you're constantly worried about these little screaming hooligans running into the abyss that we call the ocean. So yeah, so relaxing, so quiet and calm. And now being a little dramatic, only a little, but we had a lot of fun. It was a memorable trip, an adventure. Ricky, my wife, always says that, having kids is the hardest fun you'll ever have. And I think that's true, the hardest fun I've ever had. But throughout this trip, it struck me just how inconvenient it is to be a dad or to be a parent for that matter. It seems like as soon as you become a parent, it just gets inconvenient in every way. You sacrifice what you want for the good of your kids or for what they want. You have a time schedule. They don't care. Kids have their own ideas of when to get places and how to show up. You want to eat lunch, let's just say theoretically, without sand in it. You're at the beach, but they just want to throw sand in the cooler that your lunch is in. You want to sleep through the night? No, they want to hang out and talk at 2 a.m. and spend time with you. Nothing about parenting seems to be convenient. In fact, I think being a parent takes a lot of commitment. Now, if you think about commitment is simply doing something even when you don't feel like it because you believe in something bigger, a greater good that the commitment will lead to. Commitment is doing something even when it doesn't feel good. So being a parent takes a lot of commitment to just stay the course, even when things are hard. Sacrifice what you want to do for somebody else. Be patient even when you want to blow up. Commitment is loving and being present with someone else while they learn and grow for really the rest of your life. And I often long for convenience. Convenience is so nice, but the best stuff in life, when we think about it, requires commitment. Whether it's raising kids Or something else, like having a meaningful relationship, like a partnership or a marriage, or achieving some long-term goal, whatever it is, mastering a skill or getting in physical shape. I mean, the best stuff in life requires commitment over convenience. Commitment and convenience. Today we're in the second week of this sermon series. We're talking about storyteller, and we're doing this series really by looking at the different stories that Jesus told. I mean, Jesus was this master storyteller. I mean, he would use stories to illustrate who God is and to expand our understanding of how God interacts with the world. And we all know this. I mean, stories are powerful. They have the power to break down barriers, to carve through our assumptions, and they open us up to new possibilities. And Jesus' stories do that and more. So we're looking at those stories, exploring what they mean for us today and what we can learn about them. So I want to read today one of those stories, and I want to give you a little bit of a warning. This isn't really a full story as much as it is a couple of images, and images that illustrate really the tension between commitment and convenience. This is Luke chapter 9, starting in verse 57. It says this. It says, as Jesus and his disciples traveled along the road, someone said to him, I will follow you wherever you go. And Jesus replied, foxes have dens and birds in the sky have nests, but the Son of Man, talking about himself, has no place to lay his head. And then Jesus said to someone else, follow me. And he replied, Lord, first let me go and bury my father. And Jesus said to him, let the dead bury their own dead, but you go and spread the news of God's kingdom. Someone else said to Jesus, I will follow you, Lord, but first just let me go say goodbye to those in my house. And Jesus said, no one who puts a hand to the plow and looks back is fit for God's kingdom. All right. Now this doesn't feel like the normal kumbaya Jesus, right? I mean, this isn't the Jesus that we're used to. I mean, Jesus invites everyone to follow, and I love that about Jesus, right? No matter our past or what we believe, our tensions, there is space and there is room to follow Jesus. I mean, Jesus makes room to explore faith and follow him even if we don't know what we believe or how we got there. And I love that because all of us, including myself, man, we struggle sometimes with our own doubts. I know I do. And we need a Jesus that's big enough to hold those doubts. But just because it's easy to follow Jesus does not mean it's easy to be a follower. Here's what I mean by that. You know, sometimes people, even many of you have asked me, you know, are you a golfer, Matt? And I respond, yeah, I mean, I play golf, but I'm not a golfer. Or same with running. You know, I may be someone who runs, but I'm not a runner. You get the difference, right? I mean, just adding that little ER in there, it makes it like more committed. A golfer or a runner, it makes it more, onus on you to be committed to leveling up. I mean, someone who golfs or runs does it when they feel like it or they do it for fun. But being a golfer or a runner requires some commitment. It means you golf or you run even when you don't feel like it. It requires sacrifice of your time, of your energy to accomplish something bigger. See, it's the same when it comes to following Jesus. It's one thing to follow Jesus, and it's another to be a follower. And the difference between the two matters. See, if you read the Gospels, you know that it's easy to follow Jesus. It was easy to start following him around, and that's why his popularity grew throughout his story. But at some point in each gospel, the journey begins to get hard, and the journey got more difficult. The miracles were fewer and further between. The expectations got higher. The sacrifice was more costly. It was around this time that Jesus asked those who followed him to make a commitment, to be a follower even when it wasn't fun, when it didn't feel good, when it required some of that sacrifice, some of that hardship. And when Jesus made that turn, when he asked people for a commitment, many people just said, no, thanks, man, I'm going to go home. They would just call it quits and not become a follower because it was too difficult. Because there's a difference between following and being a follower. And if I had to sum up the difference, Following Jesus is often convenient. But if you want to be a follower, it requires commitment. Convenience versus commitment. And this story that we read just a moment ago is at the height of Jesus' popularity. I mean, when people were flocking to him, when it's convenient, not very risky to follow him, Jesus still has a crowd around him. There's still lots of people who want to follow. In fact, the story starts with someone running up and saying, I'll go with you wherever you want to go, wherever. And of course, at this moment, it's good. Jesus is a miracle worker. He's the guy that's challenging the religious leaders, making them look like fools, and everyone loved him. There had to be thousands of people making this offer, hey, Jesus, I'm your guy. But at the height of Jesus' personality or popularity, he begins to do something that he's not done before. He begins to warn them that being a follower isn't easy, that being a follower is actually hard, that it takes commitment. And the story gives us 3 examples of 3 different people who were following Jesus. The first guy runs up and says, hey, I want to follow you, Jesus. But Jesus answers with this strange imagery of foxes and birds and dens and nests and this sort of thing. The second guy runs up and says, hey, I just want to bury my dad. Seems reasonable. But Jesus says no. Finally, someone simply wants to just go say goodbye to their family. And Jesus warns them that once you make a decision to be a follower, there isn't time for looking back or saying goodbye even. And you know, it's easy, I think, for us to say, man, Jesus is just being hard on these folks. This seems unreasonable. But I think it's actually deeper than that. I mean, this challenges really any of us who want to follow Jesus only when it's convenient, when we want to do what we want to do, take care of our stuff, our priorities first, or only when it's comfortable. Jesus challenges the idea that you can be his follower without commitment. It's a reminder that being a follower means you follow even when it's hard. And this is tough. I mean, because in our culture, we are built on convenience. I mean, it seems like everything promises to make our life better, to be centered around us, in a word, to be more convenient, from household appliances that automate work, to overnight delivery to right to your doorstep, to cars that drive themselves so you can put on makeup or shave while you're driving, or to floors that heat up, or ventilated leather seats that stay cool, to no-wait apps that ensure you get to the restaurant right when you want to eat. I mean, we live in a world that seems like everything is marketed to make our life easier, better, more productive, less stressful, more comfortable, more convenient. And y'all, church is no different, right? We carry the same expectation of convenience into what we want church to be like. I mean, we want our coffee to be ready when we come in. We want the air the right temperature, the chairs the right softness, and the music the right volume. We want the people to greet us when we want to be greeted, and we want to be left alone when we want to be left alone. We don't want a bunch of people bugging us, but we want them to know our names. We don't want to serve, but like somebody needs to serve. We want a quality kids ministry that our kids like to go to so they're motivated to go to church. And we'd like those worship times to be whenever nap time is not. We want a message to be relevant, funny, deep, but not too deep, long enough, but not too long. And please don't say anything about what I cherish. And we want everything to be paid for, but y'all don't talk about money. We want to be missional and do things that matter in the community, but man, our Saturdays are so busy. And we want the church to be here every week we need it, even though, we'll just be here every once in a while. And make sure that the app and the website are good, because I don't really like buffering when I'm trying to worship on the couch or the beach or the trail, right? We like convenience. And I get it as much as anybody else. I mean, I like this stuff. But you all feel it. And I don't think we do this intentionally. It's just part of the culture we live in. I mean, everything else is built around us and around convenience, so that's how we'd like our faith. That's how we'd like our church. So Jesus just has to push back against it, just as he did 2,000 years ago. Because, see, there's a difference between following and being a follower. There's a difference between convenience and commitment. And I just think it's important to allow the scripture to make us feel a little uncomfortable. I mean, you and I, we prefer a Jesus that doesn't really make any demands of us. We want Jesus to just make life easier. We want faith to be convenient. But the message and the challenge here is that if you want the true fullness of what Christ offers, if you want real transformation, if you want to experience the life that Jesus talks about, then it's going to require sacrifice. It's going to require commitment, and it's going to require following even when it's not easy. You know, and as I look back, just on Good Shepherd, just on the past few years, I think about the journey that so many of us have had here in this church. It's kind of been tough. It's a required commitment. I mean, for everybody else, you know, it's COVID. Yes, COVID. And it was hard to worship online and stay connected to Christ. It took more effort. Serving was riskier. Giving felt radical. But then on top of that, we had a significant pastor change. I mean, with uncertainty and fear, we didn't know what the future of Good Shepherd was going to be. It was inconvenient, not good timing. But I'm amazed at the resiliency and the commitment of so many of you. I mean, I celebrate the ways you've been committed to following Jesus when it wasn't comfortable or easy. You worshiped through that season. You found new places and ways to serve. You continue to give in a time of economic and church uncertainty, and you stayed connected to your small group. You've shown tremendous amounts of commitment when it's inconvenient. And personally, I'm really grateful for that. But it's not just these big collective things, times of hardship, but it's also on a much more personal level. I mean, there are seasons that following Jesus is just hard. When faith no longer feels exciting or fun, and then the temptation to just stop following Jesus is real. There. So this past weekend, I was in St. Louis, St. Charles to be more specific, at a conference for all the Methodist pastors in Missouri. They come once a year and do some connecting. And every time I go to this conference, I do some reflecting on my own journey, but specifically reflecting on that first year of ministry. See, I became a pastor because I sensed Jesus asking me to follow in a new way from the ways that I'd been following before. I'd come to church kind of full of skepticism, full of doubt, full of pain, full of frustration. And I found this church that helped me have healing and hope in a new way. And I sensed through that experience that God was calling me to help create a place for people who felt broken or skeptical or full of doubt, that they could experience that healing that I had experienced. So I said, okay, I'll become a pastor, Jesus, even though that feels really weird, and I'll work on helping launch a campus for this church that I'd rediscovered my faith in. And I thought, man, this thing is going to be fun. It's going to be life-giving. It's going to be amazing. And boy, was I wrong. It wasn't. In fact, that first year of being a pastor was one of the hardest years of my life. I was full of doubt, mainly doubt about myself. I was afraid to fail. I was not good on stage. I was bad. I was really nervous all the time. And plus, on top of that, our church didn't know what we were doing. And so the system was anxious. We never launched anything, and so things felt chaotic. And so I began to get angry. Angry with God for asking me to do this thing, become a pastor. And there were countless times I just wanted to throw in the towel. I was tired. I was tempted by other jobs that seemed easier, that made more money. I even had a countdown on my phone. If I could just make it to 2 years, I would quit and do something different. But somehow that commitment held me in there. And man, I'm just glad by God's grace I stayed in when it was inconvenient. Because see, if I had stopped following when it was hard, I mean, I wouldn't have married my wife, Ricky. I wouldn't have had my 2 beautiful kids. I wouldn't have gotten this job, doing the things that I love, gotten to interact with you all and get to know you all and lead in this new way. I mean, all of this stuff would have not existed. And on top of that, the most important thing is I wouldn't have experienced the transformation and the hope and the life that God was working in me during that time in something bigger. See, we all hit hard times like this. There are seasons when faith is not convenient. There are times when faith is straight up hard. And I'm not saying if you stay committed, everything always works out. Instead, the promise is that if we keep following, even when it's hard, that God will transform us. That God will infuse a hope and a love and a life in us that even the hardest of seasons will endure. See, we remain committed because we believe in something bigger. We believe that God is doing something bigger. We remain committed because we believe that God is transforming us. We remain committed because we believe that God is transforming our church, that God is transforming our community. And friends, this means that we keep praying even when we feel like our prayers are just hitting the ceiling. Being a follower means that we keep worshiping even when we don't feel like it. It means we serve even when it's uncomfortable or inconvenient in our schedules. It means that we give even when it's scary or sacrificial or risky. Practically, really practically, it means next week checking out our serving expo right here in the lobby and just being open to serving in new ways. Or it means connecting to VBS that happens in 3 weeks where we invite and serve even if you're not a kids person. Because we believe in something bigger even though it's inconvenient. And when we step back and we look at Jesus' life, we know that while his journey was hard, the cross represented the height of sacrifice. It took the most commitment, but it was also full of the most transformation. I mean, it was where love overcame hate. It was the place where forgiveness overcame bitterness. And it was the moment that life overcame death, the hardest, most inconvenient time. And that kind of deep transformation, it's just not easy. It's not convenient. It takes commitment. And so it is often in our own life. We follow when it's hard because we believe it's worth it. Because we believe that through seasons of hardship and sacrifice that we experience the greatest transformations in our own life. Convenience and commitment. Following Jesus or being a follower. Today we have a choice. Do you want to follow Jesus around when it's convenient, or do you want to be a follower? Let us pray. God, first, I'm just grateful for so many people in this room who have shown a deep, lasting commitment to you throughout their lives, people who continue to follow even when it's difficult, people who've believed in something greater and bigger and have seen it in their lives. They have the hope. But I also know that there's some of us today in this room or listening online who are in the middle of one of those tough seasons. One where we're full of doubt and heaviness. Maybe we're just tired. And we've already started to drift away from you because things are hard. Maybe we've stopped praying. Maybe we've stopped hoping. So God, our prayer is your Spirit would fall on us. Give us the hope and the courage that comes from Christ. That we can all trust that your transformative work in our lives is that bigger thing, and that you will complete a work that you started in us. And that we can see the fruit of being a follower. It's in Jesus' powerful name that we pray. Amen.